Okay, well, we will call to order the annual membership business meeting on September 18th, 2025, 8:39 a.m. We will move on. I guess we're at roll call, but we'll go ahead and just, we're here. The approval of agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Discussion that needs to be had on this from anyone? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Moving on to approval of the minutes from the 2024 annual meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from the 2024 annual meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Mr. President, did the folks know that they can access that on there, they're voting as well?
Yeah, I did mention, and again, just a reminder for the room and membership, all can participate in votes. All are participating in this meeting. Thank you. So we have a first and a second discussion on minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Next on the agenda is a treasurer's report by our treasurer, Mr. Alec Mesdag.
I think in some ways it maybe gets a little bit harder for me to give this report every year because it's a lot easier than it used to be. But so the organization, over the last few years, or certainly since I started, right, we have, pretty substantially increased our annual budget, especially with the amount of money that we're moving through with the large federal grants. And what has happened over the time is just, especially with Stephanie's very rigid attention to detail. With the increasing federal funds, we have to go through a federal single audit, and we have done 2 of those now. This will be our 3rd year having to do that, and just the very rigid process and thorough process that Stephanie has implemented has helped us get through that without issue. And I expect that we'll see the same this year. So the organization is doing very well. There were we had a couple moments that were couple things we're a little bit nervous about this year with the uncertainty around federal grants. And there was a period there where it looked like we had paid out some work that we had anticipated being reimbursed for, and there was a delay in that. So we're a little bit nervous about that. But even if that had not come through, which it did, we are in the fortunate position of having the financial resources to weather that sort of event, which is a big difference from where we were, 9 years ago. So if anyone has any questions about that, or if you're looking through the annual report and have questions, you're welcome to catch me, or I imagine that you can always catch Stephanie too.
Thank you, Alec. Yeah, we are fortunate to be in a wonderful position, and even some of the liabilities we thought could be out there, it looks like are going away. So it's been a good year. Okay, well, we will move on to starting with an announcement of the elected board members for 2025. And those are as follows, and then we'll move on to the next, which will be approval of this. But for the public northern region, we have Emily Deach. For the private northern region, Michael Gainey. Private southern region, Marcos Shear. And the public southern region, Peter Amelon. Do we have a motion on that? So we'll need, to move an approval of that next.
Motion to approve the results of the election.
Second.
And is there discussion on this, or right to a vote, I guess? Discussion? Then we'll call the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, well, we have some new board members. And with that, it's the exciting item 6B.
Which is?
6B is, I think, I don't know if me getting kicked out is the right wording, but I think the better wording is President-elect Katie taking office.
It's a coronation.
Thank you, past President Kirkpatrick for that. It is a tremendous honor to be able to work with all of you and serve this organization that brings government and business together. I can't tell you how honored I am to be able to serve you all. So thank you. I would like to take a moment to, and this has almost as much feedback as City Hall in Juneau, but I would like to take a moment to recognize our outgoing board members because we have some truly phenomenal individuals that have served this organization in really extraordinary manner. Lacey Simpson, she is our past president, but she got the privilege of serving 2 years as president when Caitlin had the honor, and then we snatched her up as staff to recognize that brilliance. Lacey has just been a real champion of community, building relationships in Southeast Alaska. And I've really appreciated her leadership and her always being willing to step up to the plate. So I know she wasn't able to join us, but when you see her, please thank her for her service. We also are sadly saying goodbye to Dennis Gray out of Hunut. Again, another wonderful leader of our region, always bringing us that voice of our smaller communities. That's so important because that really is the majority of what we serve, right? We're an organization made up of all these wonderful communities across Southeast Alaska. And in his patient, humble, and humorous manner, Dennis spent many years serving Southeast Conference. And Elizabeth Cornejo, we have here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your thoughtful service. We work together on vision and mission and values, and kind of as we grew as an organization, really making that front and center. So I really appreciate your work on that. And not an outgoing board member, but certainly someone worthy of recognition for his leadership is President Zach Kirkpatrick. So I'd love to present to you this plaque, because now, well, you don't have to figure out how to put this in your carry-on, actually, but that's what I had to do this morning. But really just truly appreciate how you approach your leadership. You're so even-keeled, humble, funny. He can sing. I don't know if you noticed when the guy in the flannel on the hat, that was none other than this distinguished president. So thank you for just guiding us through these times. I mean, they've been tumultuous times, but I really think that with your leadership, we've been able to come out on top. And so we all appreciate you. And welcome to our new members, Emily and Michael. We are very pleased to have you and to have, there you are. I'm like, where's Michael? Have your service. I think you're going to find that working even more closely with this organization is a true pleasure. Let's see, now we move on to action items and election of, no, did I miss something?
Yep.
The official changing of the guard. This dais up here, it's very official. So now action items. We'd like to elect officers for the board, and the tradition here, which is how I ended up in this seat, not unknowingly, but it just kind of sneaks up on you, is that the second vice president moves up to first vice president. So do I have a motion to appoint, elect Gracia O'Connell as first VP?
So moved. Second.
All right, any discussion by the membership? And Gracia unfortunately wasn't able to join us either, but she's been a wonderful voice on the board. All in favor of Gracia O'Connell as first VP?
Yes.
Aye.
All right, we'll let her know that's what happens when you don't come to Southeast Conference. Can I take a nomination for second VP?
I nominate Liz Cabrera for second VP.
All right. Do we have a second? Excellent, thank you. And I do know that Liz has been attending this, so appreciate her service. Any discussion on Liz as second VP? All right, all in favor of Liz Cabrera as second VP? Awesome, thank you, everyone. All right, that gets us down to voting on the location of the annual meeting. Right now, it is scheduled in September 22nd to 24th in Ketchikan. So Mayor, can I pass the word?
Just one moment.
There he is. I see him. Might not have been warned that he had a speaking role, so he's doing the most important thing, networking out there.
Madam President, Mayor Severson. Thank you. The community of Ketchikan would certainly love and invites Southeast Conference to come to Ketchikan next year to enjoy our wonderful hospitality and gather again. And, you know, the communications that goes on this floor during the meeting is exceptional. And we want to make sure that continues, and we're going to be looking forward to everything that Southeast Conference does for us. Thank you.
Thank you. We are looking forward to Ketchikan, and thank you for the offer to host us. We always have a good time there. The next item, do we have to vote on this? We have to vote on this. Okay, all in favor of Ketchikan as the next location for Southeast Conference annual meeting. So moved, and thank you. Anyway, discussion on Ketchikan.
Have you guys seen Sitka?
We have, and it's lovely. We've seen it in all its forms: sunny, windy, rainy, gray, and that's just in the last 2 days.
How about the year after?
All in favor for annual meeting in Ketchikan in 2026, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. The next item we have on our agenda is Resolution 2602, and that should be on your tables. I'm going to hand it over to Robert. This was brought forward from the community of Wrangell, and he is going to explain a little bit about the resolution and the process.
I think there's no secret that management of this species has been problematic for many, many years. And so the community of Wrangell has brought this resolution forward, and generally we either bring resolutions through committees, or they can come to the board during the year, and then we bring them to the annual meeting when it has something as impactful as this has been problematic. So we try to send this out to the entire membership in advance, so there was opportunity to weigh in. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. If you could just scroll down to the therefore be it resolves as well. There's hard copies that are on the table, so you could take a look at that as well. But if you get just goes on a little right there, there you go. So those are the therefore be it resolves, and I don't think that there are really anything that has not been said in the past, but it's just one more effort to get the managing entities to work together to kind of have a management program. So there's an opportunity for the membership to weigh in again here, and it's doubtful that any lasting immediate solution is going to happen. So this is part of the process that'll continue with the agencies and our legislators. So will be lots more opportunity, unfortunately, to discuss this, but that's just kind of a snapshot of where it is and
Thank you, Robert. So I think we probably need a motion to put this resolution on the floor.
I move to adopt the resolution.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there discussion by the membership? Yes, please. And Robert, will you bring the microphone back?
was a question?
Oh, in the back table there.
This is a great resolution and I heartily endorse you passing it. But I do want to note that when the sea otters disappear, the urchins eat kelp beds. And so kelp beds disappear. So if there's some way to ensure that the management program will take those kinds of things into account and not wholesale decimate otters because they're controlling the urchins that decimate the kelp beds. So it's very good that they've specified that it's native people who can kill the otters. That's a good that's very good. And I just wanted to make it that we aren't wholesale endorsing the decimation of otters.
Thank you. And that is a good point that others have brought up as well. But, and I think that's why they try to speak to the balanced approach for the ecological impacts for that. So thank you for that. Yes, sir. President Jackson.
My name is Joel Jackson. Sorry about the frog in my throat this morning. I come from Cake, and we're surrounded by sea otters, thousands of them. And we've seen them encroach on our territory for the last 20 years or so. And as they become more and more, they decimated our clam, what do you call it? Oh, yeah, clam bed, sorry. Mine's not working either. But when you walk onto the beach, you can tell they were there. Look like little bombs went off all over the beach. And you go dig clams there, you're lucky to find anything. And cockles. And sea urchins. Sea cucumbers. So in Cake, we do hunt them, but we only try to hunt them close to our community to try to push them back. Because that's about the only thing we can do. We'd run out of bullets if we try to decimate them. There's no way. There's too many of them. So I'm glad that the resolution was brought to the floor, and hopefully, you know, like I say, you're not gonna put a dent in them. They're too far and wide, scattered everywhere. So, thank you.
Thank you. Questions here and then here.
Thank you. I wanted to just share a couple things that came to mind as I was reading the resolution. So when I worked at the tribe years and years ago, I helped to support the fur product industry. And I think it's something that had a lot of energy around it, but maybe that's lessened. And so I think some of the ways that the Sitka tribe has done that is that they have a tannery. Tanneries are really tough to manage and run, and it's a dirty job. I think we should have the dirty jobs guy come to the tannery and do that. But that is one piece of this, is that when you harvest a sea otter, caring for the hide is really essential. And so if we can be thinking about that and how we can support those programs, thinking about how we can teach artists to work with fur products. My mom is an artist that does fur products, and it's very specialized skill. And so we saw that bear last night, and that takes a lot of work. And so how can we be raising artisans to use these otters to then create an economic opportunity for our tribal people? So those were just a couple things that I was thinking about as we're kind of being strategic. Also, it's supporting people to be able to learn how to hunt. I think it's a beautiful thing when our young people, tribal citizens, are able to go out and learn to hunt, but they also need boats. They need training on using the guns. So how can we as a region help to train and support? If you've got a boat, could you host a sea otter harvest? And that learning can be perpetuated, and we're kind of full circle on that. So things to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sally McLaughlin. I'm the mayor. I'm the mayor of Gustavus, and our city council attempted to pass a similar resolution. And because we are the gateway to Glacier Bay National Park, we have a plethora of scientists who weighed in heavily on this concept. And we had a lot of public comment, and I've just got to, can't do two things at once. One of the things I just wanted to read was the relationship between sea otters, shellfish, and kelp forest is complex, involving trophic cascades, which means chain reactions through the food chain, and interactions with other species in the ecosystem. When otters control urchin populations, kelp forests flourish, providing critical habitat for marine species such as rockfish. The sea otter is a natural keystone species in marine ecosystems. Alter this relationship and everything else is affected. Attempts to control this natural element would risk a cascade of effects throughout our marine environment, central to community values and livelihoods in Southeast Alaska. A resolution advocating sea otter control is ill-advised without comprehensive preliminary studies. And I'll stop there, but that was the gist of most of the comments that we got. Thank you. Thanks.
Seeing no other membership comments, Madam President. Oh, President Jackson has a follow-up.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. We do have two people that tan hides in my community. And we do have skin sewing classes. I've taken it myself. I made scarves and hats and stuff. Winters are long, so you got to keep your hands busy. But, it's all well and good. And in our culture, we don't waste anything. But at the same time, we have to protect our homelands from everything. And the sea otter, like I said, they decimate our clam beds. And, they're just destructive, and they're eating all the food that we depend on. And I appreciate everybody that wants to protect the sea otters. They're nice and cute, but we don't see that. It's just that, I think every community should be able to make that decision. Like us, we want to protect our shellfish and everything, right? Our crabs and everything. So no disrespect meant for anybody, but I think it should go by community by community.
One more in the back.
Casey Smith, Mayor Craig. Yeah, just to echo, basically, we have numerous amount of sea otters down there out of Craig, hundreds by the thousands. I haven't been able to catch a crab under 230, 250 feet. Basically, the sea otters that, thrived here back in the day that were basically harvested for their pelts years ago are not the same sea otters that are here today. They transplanted them down from a different region into Southeast Alaska, and they're bigger and badder than they were in the past. And without basically balance, then the sea otters are just going to continue to thrive. And, all of our subsistence, clams, crabs, shellfish, are perished. You go down on the beaches through, outskirts of Craig, and they're just littered in just white clamshells. So I'm totally for the sustainability and, being able to work together and get control of the population as well as, being responsible at the same time. Thank you.
Thanks. Madam President.
All right, any additional comments before we call the question? All right, I'm going to go ahead and do a voice vote, but if there is, if there's not clarity between ayes and nays, then we will revisit that. So will all in favor say aye?
Aye.
And all opposed, nay? Okay, so I hear one nay, which means the ayes carry it unless I am, did anyone nay that I didn't recognize? Oh, okay, then that passes. And we will move on to member instructions to the board. So this is your opportunity as members of Southeast Conference to give this group of people instructions on what you want us to focus on, your thoughts, and just really have some dialogue with us. So would like to open up the floor to member instructions to the board, and Robert will walk around with a microphone.
For a long time, I didn't think Robert was smart.
So my comment.
It's going to be a little bit more difficult because I understand Southeast Conference has grown to a level where we need either Ketchikan or Sitka for our annual conference. And I don't want to exclude anyone from coming to our annual conference, but I know that there's a lot more communities in Southeast than Sitka. There's a lot more than just Ketchikan. So if the board could explore visiting more communities at maybe other times of the year, or getting us to, I don't know, I'd love to go sleep in the Craig gym if that's what we had to do, right? We did that as kids here playing basketball. So look at some other options besides the two communities that we tend to visit frequently, and let's spread this knowledge and wealth around to.
So may I speak to that for just a moment? 100% agree. And one part of the strategy we're looking at is either having committee meetings or special workshops in different parts of the region, whether it's focused on transportation or, as the commissioner said, there's so much at DNR and the natural resources arena that we could dive into. So they're looking strategically how we might be able to host more of those type of meetings in the other communities. So appreciate those comments.
Me again. My name's Deborah Hayden. I'm the executive director of Grow Ketchikan, and I have a religious fervor about economic diversification. So in the future, I'd like to see some panels devoted to manufacturing and technology and things that can diversify our economy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those are very thoughtful comments, and we will take them into consideration and use our networking skills from being members of Southeast Conference to try to bring some of those speakers and think of some solutions for reaching more broadly in Southeast Alaska. Any other member instructions till we move on to information and announcements? All right, so we will be pleased to host mid-session summit that in my community, February 10th of Juneau, Alaska, February 10th through 12th. So hopefully it won't be until February that we see each other again, but most certainly join us in Juneau. I can't promise warm showers, but I can promise we'll have some good food and some good fellowship while we're there. Before Mayor of Sitka always gives me a hard time for cold showers. And I know that he's not the only one who's had a cold shower in Juneau, so we'll work on that. Any member remarks before we close out this annual business meeting? All right, well then, without further ado, I thank you for your presence here and for your service to our region, and this meeting is adjourned.
Just a little bit of housekeeping. We will resume our panel discussions. We'll go into a break, and we will have our next sessions beginning at just before 10 o'clock. We have a pre-recorded message from Representative Nick Begich, and then we'll go into our housing panel, healthcare, and then some future-ready resilience before our lunch keynote, and then our breakout section. So we'll continue networking and see you in a few.
All right, we are at 9:53, so we're 3 minutes behind our 9:50 agenda item. Unfortunately, Representative Begich was unable to call in live, but he did provide us with a video, so we're going to go ahead and play that now. There you are. You're behind schedule, sir.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you all today for the 2025 Southeast Alaska Economic Summit. To the business leaders, community members, tribal representatives, and local officials who keep Southeast Alaska moving forward, thank you for being here, and thank you for your commitment to this part of the state. This year's theme is Rooted in Resilience, and it symbolizes the strength of Southeast Alaska over time. In recent years, you've faced economic challenges, regulatory setbacks, and of course, the usual federal overreach. Yet this community has never wavered in fighting for a stronger Alaska with greater opportunities. When I came to Congress in January, I made a promise to fight for the right of Alaskans to responsibly manage and benefit from the vast resources of our great state. And I'm proud to say that we are delivering on that promise. Earlier this year, Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, a once-in-a-generation piece of legislation that opens the door for real economic revitalization in Alaska. We've restored leasing in ANWR. We've restored leasing in NPRA. We've restored leasing in Cook Inlet, bringing certainty and opportunity back to Alaska's energy sector. We've increased Alaska's share of resource revenues to 70%, putting more dollars back into our communities than ever before. We've streamlined NEPA, cutting red tape that has delayed important infrastructure and development projects for years across our entire nation. These wins are not theoretical. They are about jobs. They are about affordable energy. They're about putting Alaskans back in the driver's seat when it comes to our future. Just last month, I was honored to welcome members of the House Natural Resources Committee to Alaska for a congressional delegation. We had the opportunity to take an aerial tour of the Tongass National Forest and met with local stakeholders. We saw firsthand the impact of federal mismanagement and the urgent need for a new path forward for Alaska. My colleagues here in the House came away more committed than ever to ensure that our forests are healthy, productive, and managed in partnership with local communities. That's why I fully support the Trump administration's effort to rescind the 2001 roadless rule, a rule that has tied the hands of our land managers, choked off access, and harmed rural economies in Southeast Alaska for more than 2 decades. 92% of the Tongass National Forest is currently locked up by the roadless rule. That's not conservation. That is economic obstruction. Rescinding the roadless rule means we can restore access to timber and renewable resources, create local jobs, and rebuild infrastructure that supports rural connectivity and economic renewal for Southeast Alaska. Alaska's best days are ahead of us, but we won't get there through Washington mandates. We'll get there by empowering Alaskans to lead in the state that they love. Whether it's sustainable timber in the Tongass or housing and transportation investment across our region, the Southeast economy depends on our ability to responsibly access and steward our resources. That is what we are fighting for in Congress. And I want to thank all of you, the members of Southeast Conference, for being our partners in that fight. Your regional strategy, your committee work, and your grassroots advocacy are shaping the future of this region of Alaska. As your representative in D.C., I'll continue to advocate fiercely for policies that respect Alaska's sovereignty and create lasting generational opportunities. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today, but more importantly, thank you for all the work that you do for the people of Southeast Alaska. Let's keep working together for a stronger Alaska. Thank you, and God bless you.
All right. Appreciation to Congressman. You know, his schedule did not accommodate beaming in live. Matter of fact, I saw him last week at a fisheries event in DC, and then again at the airport because he was flying to another event. He's on like 11 different committees and subcommittees, where I think a lot of the focus that we'll be working with him over the next year is on the Transportation Committee. He is on the House Transportation Committee where the reauthorization bill comes up next year, and that's going to be very important for our transportation infrastructure, and especially the ferry system. And one of his colleagues, he's a co-chair of the Ferry Caucus of the U.S. House, and one of his colleagues came up with the committee last month, and I was able to spend the day with her. We actually took the ferry over to Huna and back, and so that be a lot of focus on that. He mentioned our SEDS and our committee work. I'm going to invite the next panel to come on up. The housing hurdles to meet an economic boom. We have housing hurdles. We had an economic depression. We have housing hurdles, and so come on up. And so we're going to take a look at some models, some insights and successes and challenges. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Richard Harney here to kind of help keep things flowing, but really appreciate each one of you all participating this morning. And for somebody out there who's having a hard time seeing, these glasses were left somewhere within my reach. And so they disappeared off your table, off someplace. So they're going to be up front here, but they are prescriptions, so they mean something to somebody. Anyway, they'll be right up here at the front table. Mr. Harney?
Thank you.
Those, we have some feedback problems, so when you're done talking, make sure you turn those off, and they'll be red when they're on. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. I'm Richard Harney. I'm the tribal planner for Ketchikan Indian community. And today we're going to be talking about the housing hurdles to meet an economic boom. And up here we have Esther Ashton with the Tlingit and Haida Regional Housing Authority. We have Cliff Richter with Baranof Island Housing Authority. And we have Randy Hughey, the executive director with Sitka Community Land Trust. So to get us started today, Robert is letting us do our own moderating here. So we might go a little bit longer than, sorry, Search, wherever you are, apologize. But we're going to go ahead and start with Esther, and she's going to share what Tlingit and Haida is doing.
Uh-oh, feedback. Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see familiar faces. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Esther Ashton Reese. My Tlingit name is Achsin. I will introduce myself in our language. Achsin yuchat duasak, chak nachatzati, tagwedi ayachat ki kwanda chatzati, kachadiyet ki chatzati, dach dein tan, dash khan chatzati, chai hit dach chatzati. My Tlingit name is Achsin. I am eagle. I am killer whale. And when we say what our clan is, we're matrilineal. So we honor our mothers and our grandmothers. It's not indicative of what our fathers and grandfathers are. So my father was adopted into the salmon people. My grandfather was of the sea pigeon people, and I come from the Yellow Cedar House in Cake, and it's so good to see Cake people here. Good morning, Joel. So I'm honored to serve as the Chief Operating Officer for the Tlingit and Haida Regional Housing Authority. Prior to that, I was the Tribal Administrator for the Wrangell Cooperative Association in Wrangell. And yeah, really happy to be here to talk about housing. Sean Guthrie was supposed to have been on the panel. Unfortunately, he was unable to be here this morning. And so I am happy to be here. I am brand new, so, oh. Come on, clicker. Okay. So housing authority was housing needs were identified to be the number one priority in the SEDS, as indicated by the brilliant Melanie Shivens. And you can tell why when you see the challenges. The challenges are just multifaceted, they're broad. We have small rural communities in need of housing. And I myself felt this when I moved to Juneau. I told Jackie Payda, our president, I said, I might be homeless. I have a dog. The houses sell within 24 hours in Juneau. It's just, the environment is wild. And in Wrangell, the same thing. I was actually the beneficiary of a housing authority home in Wrangell. So I had asked our very fiery construction manager, Lorraine Diasis, to tell me about what housing challenges she saw, knowing probably what she was going to say. And when I asked her, I lost my whole morning because there were just so many challenges that she wanted to talk about. So I asked her to provide me with a list. So every single blue box up here is a challenge that Lorraine has run into. And each box can be significant. So it's everything from funding to approvals to property, zoning, environmental reviews, high costs of shipping, damaged goods when they arrive. And some of them were rather interesting. She told me, you know, in Petersburg, I have problems with spotted frogs. And I was like, spotted frogs, what are you talking about? And she said, I have to figure out how to move spotted frogs and spotted frog eggs out of our development zone and into a different zone due to the environmentals. Yeah, so spotted frogs. If Lorraine gets a grant in June or July, she has to wait until the next April because under the environmentals, they have to be able to see the flora and fauna blooming. So lots of very interesting things that I learned during that morning. Okay, I will get this right. So I love some of the creative things that the Housing Authority is doing to meet some of those challenges. And so one of those is obviously labor. And I love that they took the master apprentice model, which was a part of our culture, and they made that applicable for housing. So in our culture, we had master apprentice relationships. So you had master carvers and apprentices, and we actually took that model in Wrangell and made that work for today. Thank you to and the SAS, we raised 5 totem poles for the first time in 38 years in Wrangell. And that model, we are bringing back. The Housing Authority is using it for apprenticeships for electricians and plumbers. And I did not realize the very, very long path that those apprentices have to go through. They have to have their mentor. The mentor can only have one apprentice, and it's a 4-year process. If that mentor retires, leaves, that apprentice is stuck until they can find another mentor. So very, very laborious process that would be wise to look at changing. But some of the areas of success, despite the challenges that we've had, I'm going to go through really briefly. But this first one I really love because we were able to help 6 tribal families attain home ownership when they thought it was unachievable. This was made possible by Hayakawu Finance Corporation, which is Tlingit and Haida's CDFI. It was one of the very first Native CDFIs in the country. And Hayakawu worked with these 6 individuals, got their credit up. They went through financial, educational classes. And once they finished those classes, they received down payment assistance. They were also able to use sweat equity to lower the price of their homes. So Amanda Bagayo on what is your far left, she is a single mom and she learned how to install insulation underneath her home. She completely insulated the bottom of her home and lowered the cost of that house to her. And it was amazing at the ribbon cutting to just see the emotion on her face as she had something that she previously felt was unattainable for her family. And every single homeowner has their own unique story, and it's just so amazing. I wish I could tell you about all of them. Some other successes that really look to, I think, what Southeast Alaska needs are just the collaboration between the tribes, the housing authorities, the municipalities. The Cake Senior Center was a great example. In our culture, we honor our elders. You can see there was the weaving together of multiple funding sources, the city coming together with the tribe, the tribal council, the local corporation, and the housing authority to really make this project a reality. And then we have Peterson Hill in Juneau. Peterson Hill is a build-ready project. We have 30 lots, and we have funding for, I believe it's 16 homes, but I want to tell you that 14 of these homes are not going to be restricted. So they'll be open to any community members in Juneau who would like to build a home there at Peterson Hill. And this was an example of collaboration between the city, the housing authority, to bring a fairly large new subdivision to Juneau. And then we have Petersburg. Petersburg was another great example of collaboration where the city gifted the land, the housing authority developed it, and the housing authority kept some of the lots for homes, and the city kept some of the lots. Once again, multiple funding sources and a lot of collaboration on the project was needed to move forward. And so this is obviously a huge problem. It wouldn't be our number one priority if it weren't difficult, if it weren't hard to solve. And I think that in my experience in just all of the different projects across Southeast Alaska, what we really need is collaboration and to come together with all of the different entities helping to solve this problem, and doing that creatively and doing that with weaving together funding sources. I mean, we have a lot of ideas: collective procurement, a regional construction project center. There are lots of things we can do, but we can't do it in our own little silos, and we can't do it alone. So, okay. Wishhowlitzin in Tlingit means together we are strong. So that would be my wish for housing, is that together we can be strong. So Gunashish to all of you and all that you are doing to make our region stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. If we can bring up the slides for Ketchikan Indian community. So, Richard Hart. So I'm Richard Harney. Before coming over to the tribe to be the tribal planner, I was the planning director in Ketchikan for the Ketchikan Gateway Borough. And so affordable housing, attainable housing, workforce housing, it's been on my lips for probably over a decade now. I mean, it's been a problem. The assembly in Ketchikan identified housing as a problem in the late 90s. And let's see if we can stop that hum there. And so we have been working on that for a long time in Ketchikan, just like every other community around. From the way that my perspective anyways, is that there is no silver bullet. There isn't just going to be one. As Esther mentioned, there's lots of problems. There's a ton of different solutions that are out there. And as mentioned, some of the struggles that we have is specifically with buildable land, at least in Ketchikan. And not just buildable land that's vacant and ready or that we can then develop, but really vacant land that has the infrastructure that goes along with it. Infrastructure is extremely expensive. Same with the cost of materials, the shipping costs. Something that I recently learned in the last 5 years, also the disposal of construction material. That's extremely expensive to get rid of sheetrock and insulation. So all of these factors go into the development of housing and rentals. And those rentals and housing directly affects our workforce, as all of you know, right? If we don't have somewhere for someone to stay or the family to move into the community, we're not going to get them. The infrastructure that we are looking for, the funding sources for infrastructure through grants is very limited. The Denali Commission is extremely helpful. I don't see them here this morning. I think she must have already left, but they have given us a grant to develop, and I'll talk about that here in just a second. But the Denali Commission is a great source. But generally speaking, they don't want to fund all of the infrastructure costs. They only want to do a portion of it to help get us up and over the finish line. That means for private developers, the infrastructure, the roads, the utilities, all of that has to be borne by the developer on the front end before they even sell a house. So that just compounds the issue, because that's a lot of money. So governments can work towards affordable housing, but generally it's going to need some subsidy, whether that's donation of the land, whether that's waivers on permitting, whether that's waivers on installation costs and inspections from utility companies. Whatever it is, that subsidy is necessary in order to achieve affordable housing. But one of the things that we don't do well at is define who we're trying to develop affordable housing for. And so I would encourage all of us as communities to really sit back and contemplate on who it is that we're trying to target. And of course, you know, which demographic is that? The lowest income, the homeless, those that are in poverty or below poverty, with rental income or rentals? Are we looking to try to attract the 30 and 40 somethings and 50 somethings to come back to the community that have a very, a good wage? The high schooler graduates, do we want to keep them? Are we looking at the elders? And of course, our answer is yes, right? Our answer is we want to give housing to everyone, but that is a very large bite of the apple that we have to try to absorb. And so in Ketchikan Indian community, our housing authority under the leadership of Myrna Cheney, we have developed essentially a policy to look at the low income, the homeless, and that's what we're focusing on right now. So some of those projects, let's see if, okay. So this project here is one that we are getting a grant from the Denali Commission on, and this is for a water tank. We own property up at the top of a hill, and it is above where the municipal water tank is. And so in order for us to develop above, we have to develop a loop road because there's already too many homes, dwelling units on the road, the dead end road. And also we have to increase the water pressure up there to be able to serve all of the new homes that we're hoping to do. So we did receive a BIA grant for 3.9 million, and the Denali Commission has also granted us a 1.9 million. That's not going to finish out the project, but at least it'll be enough for us to get started as we continue looking for additional sources of revenue. With this development, very similar to what Esther was talking about, we are looking at developing with rural cap some sweat equity homes. And we're hoping that that's going to help drive down that cost and allow these our members to move into the subdivision. One of our shining lights right now under Myrna's vision is for a permanent supportive housing development. We're currently underway. We have all of our funding in place. This is LIHTC funding along with additional grants. The stacking I'll show you here in just a moment. But this is a 28 unit efficiency apartment building, and we are targeting the low income chronically homeless elders in our community. And this is also open to the community. It's not just for tribal members. The stacking, the funding stacking here, total was just shy of 17 million. Probably by the end of the project, we will be up and over that number, or over $17 million. But as you can see, we did receive the LIHTC funds, the low-income housing tax credits, along with additional funding. We're really excited about this project. We're underway. I think the second floor is being framed up as we speak. So we're really excited. This is right across. Anyone that's been to Ketchikan, hopefully by the time that we get there next year, we'll have this completed, and maybe we'll be able to give tours during Southeast Conference. On an adjacent parcel is another vision is for a navigation center. This navigation center will be a one-stop shop, so to speak, for our tribal members and also for the community, the homeless and the low-income folks, to be able to come and receive services and have a place that they can congregate. And this is on an adjacent parcel to our permanent supportive housing unit. Again, this takes a lot of funding stacking. And so we've already received about 1.2, a little over $1.2 million so far, and we have about 6.5 hoping that we get the grant funds so we can finish this building. With our NAHASDA funds, our ICDBG funds, we've been able to develop this triplex. This triplex will be for rentals, as rentals, and we'll be able to add to our Ketchikan housing stock. So as you can see, KIC, we've identified the lower income as who we're targeting. Eventually, we're hoping that once we can maybe solve or at least put a dent in the low income side of the housing market, then we can move on to the market rate. And that's going to take partnerships. That's going to take unique ideas. There's a community, Jackson Hole. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Jackson Hole, but one of their programs that they have there is a housing lottery system. And that keeps the land at a low, the housing at a low rate that is affordable, so they can keep their workforce in the community. Because here in Southeast, once we push, if we displace our workforce, they're not in a bedroom community. They're gone. They're not just going to move out and be able to commute into our communities. So that's one of the biggest fears that I have looking at housing is how do we keep our workforce and not price them out of our communities? And so with that, I'm going to pass the clicker over to Randy.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Randy Hughey. That's a hot mic. And we're going to advance right past that, go immediate. Maybe we're going to scroll. Yeah. Did I go way past? I did. Here we go. We'll get control of this very soon. Okay, so my colleagues here are speaking about very broad ideas and big projects in the region, and I'm honored to be amongst them. The Sitka Community Land Trust is a smaller thing and more of a startup, and I'm just going to give you one big idea, and that is to explain what a community land trust is, how its economics work, and why that might be useful to you in your community. With apologies to those who have heard this all before. But so how a community land trust works is that we acquire land, build a small house, separate the deed of the land from the deed of the house, and the buyer buys only the house. And the land stays in the trust and is leased for about $50 a month. We intend to serve people up to 120% of area median income, because in Sitka, the average home value is around $550,000 right now, which is well out of reach of the kind of people that we are trying to serve. So initial affordability, and this is on the test, initial affordability, no land cost, small house, and whatever subsidies we can bring to bear, right? The Rasmussen Foundation and many others have been very good to us, and typically we are able to pay with grants the work beneath the ground, and the home buyer buys from the concrete up, all right? Initial affordability. But the real magic of a community land trust is that it creates permanent affordability. This is done by limiting profit taking at resale. See, the fundamental economic problem, why we all have housing problems in our communities and across America, is that home values, property values have escalated beyond earnings radically across my lifetime. And a way to manage that is to limit profit taking at resale so the home stays permanently affordable. So how it simply, so the owner keeps all of the equity that they purchase with their down payments and their monthly payments when they sell their house, but they only get 25% of the increase in the appraised value. And then we put the house back on the market at a rate that will be affordable to someone at the same income level as that of the initial buyer. All right. So how that works, here's a slide that just shows a home which sold last summer. So $280,000 was the initial price to the initial buyer, and it was appraised at $330,000. 2 years later, it was appraised at $430,000, which is terrible, right? I mean, that's an amount of escalation that's not sustainable. It's bad for all of us, but those are real numbers, right? So when this person sold their home after 2 years of ownership, they kept the equity that they had purchased with their down payment and their monthly payments, which amounted to about $12,000. And they kept 1/4 of the increase in the appraised value, or $25,000. So in 2 years, they walked away with $37,000. Now that is an unrealistic number, right? That it cannot stay that way. But that is what happened, and it illustrates the math. And then we put the house back on the market at the initial sale price of $280,000 plus the $25,000 of, call it, profit that they took out. So we sold it at $305,000. So it is at that point, it was still affordable to someone at the same income level as who bought the house, right? So limiting profit taking like that sort of mimics the way times were when my parents were buying a house and raising, right? Because you buy a house, and everybody could buy one, by the way, and then when they sold it, they did not get rich from that. Right? At that time in the American economy, equity in a home was not the largest asset of middle Americans. Right? So this kind of goes back to that time. They don't make a lot of money when they sell the house, but their house remains permanently affordable. So a community that invests in with subsidies of land and whatever money we can bring from the Denali Commission or the Rasmussen Foundation to do the site work under the ground, all of that stays in place. The home is still affordable. Some models of affordable home ownership bring subsidy, create a house that's sold at less than market value, and then the first owner takes away the profit. The house escalates with the market, and all of the subsidies that went into that house go away as profit to the first homeowner, and the house is no longer affordable. And then the community is right back where they started. I'm going to start over again. So the idea here is with steady work, we can create a stock of homes in the community land trust home that can serve as, we'll call them starter homes, and people can own them, buy them, accrue some equity, some money, and perhaps be able to get out on the open market at some point. All right, so community land trust, that's the model. Initial affordability, permanent affordability. So I want to speak, this is just a picture taken of our neighborhood. And I want to speak about some things more broadly now. For instance, what are the real barriers that we face in creating affordable housing? Cliff, I set a timer up and forgot to start it. So when your time is ready to go, you just tell me. Well, a barrier is not eager and prepared buyers. You all would be impressed if you saw how many young families have been working and saving money so that they can have a substantial down payment. It is a pleasure to work with people who have saved money and avoided debt and are ready to go. There are many of them. A barrier is no longer getting the community to understand and support the community land trust here model in Sitka. At the beginning, people were very leery. What? You don't own the land? You know, it took a while to get people to accept that. And a barrier is not support from our city staff, particularly in building and in planning. They're on our team. But the greatest challenges in Sitka have to do with buildable land, cost of development, and financing costs. Buildable land, the best buildable land, the only really good buildable land was built years and years ago. We have really marginal parcels left. We've been looking for land that the city owns that we might ask for. And there was a site that was timbered and looked great. And my project manager and I went out with a 20-foot stick of rebar and shoved it into the ground 16 feet by hand all over the site. Right? And so we got a quote for what would the helical pilings cost, and it's like $60,000 per house. And it's the best option we think we have. We looked at a lot of parcels, given the locations of utilities and many other factors. Okay, so buildable ground, biggest thing, cost of development. That's just something we all share. But one of the costs that we have that we've been able to make progress on is financing costs. We've been paying from the only bank who would help us, First Bank, we've been getting construction loans. We get a buyer, we get a construction loan, we build a house. It's 10.75% interest, costing about $20,000 per house in 9 months. We have been raising the money to have in-house financing. So we have working capital construction funds that we have, and we build a house, sell the house, put the money back in, build the next house. We are trying to increase that fund so that we can build 4 at once. Okay. A couple of broader ideas before I wrap up. I've recently come across the idea, many of you probably are very familiar with this, but there's a community near in Montana called Big Sky. And they are a very, very wealthy ski resort community. And they couldn't get the workforce housing. Nobody could afford, even the doctors can't afford houses in Big Sky. And they are doing a deed restriction. So they acquire land, and all of the land that they acquire has a deed restriction that people who buy the land must earn 75% of their household income in Big Sky. Aspen does the same thing. They say it's been tested in courts of law. I hope so, because then that deed restriction depresses the value a little bit, because the only people you could sell it to after your ownership is someone who works there, and which is good. It depresses value and preserves it for people who live there and work there, as opposed to more folks that want a home for 3 weeks out of the year when the snow is good, right? So deed restrictions have hope for us all, I believe. And then a last thing that we have done is to acquire the funding for an apartment building, 6 units of rental units, and those will serve, kept at below market value, but serve to sustain the work of the Sitka Community Land Trust in its mission, which is affordable home ownership. So rentals paying for home ownership development. And I have many other things that I could say, but I'm being sensitive to Cliff here, so I will stop. Cliff.
Thanks, Randy. My name is Cliff Richter. I'm the Executive Director with Baranof Island Housing Authority. I have -6 minutes, so I'll try to finish within my allotted time. But I shouldn't have much time. I was a late addition, and I kind of plugged myself in to get up here. It just made a little too much sense for me to be a part of it. being here these last 3 days. And so I'm thankful to be up here. Mostly, I want to use the time to motivate and inspire because there are so many negative things to everything that we're working on. This room is filled with experts, the best workers in their field in the state of Alaska. And I think it's important to recognize that. I tell my staff that when challenges come our way, the thing that I focus on is that we are here to work on the hard things, right? So it's easy to complain about how hard the day is or how hard the project is, but I try to remind myself and others that if it was easy, they'd hire somebody else to do it, but it's really hard, and that's why they hired us. So we're here to work on those things and solve some of these huge problems like housing and you name it, but the tourism thing, the natural resources management, everything, basically the economy, it's all so very hard. The housing component, Begich is responsible for just the Sitka area alone, and that's an incredibly challenging job in itself. I have a lot of respect for the regional housing authorities such as Tlingit and Haida that have other areas besides just Juneau to manage. It's amazing work that they do. I don't know how they balance all of that. There's so much work to do in Sitka. I'm thankful for what the housing authority has been able to accomplish. I'm thankful for some of the resources we've had access to. The Alaska Housing Finance Corporation granted us $4.5 million of what they call the Last Frontier Housing Initiative. And they gave us a really short timeline to turn that around. Kind of by design, it was remaining COVID funds essentially from Treasury ERA funding that was remaining, and they were able to use that for capital projects. We're in the middle, about 75% complete on a multifamily housing project of 8 units. And that'll be completed and ready for occupancy this winter. You heard that right. We're building 8 units with $4.5 million. Actually, it costs more than that. And it's just the reality of how crazy inflation and all of these costs are. But we're still able to turn it around by the funding deadline. I'm very thankful and appreciative that the Sitka Tribe of Alaska has partnered with us to provide $3 million to go toward a single-family housing subdivision that is in design right now. And we're hoping to, currently it's a 40-lot subdivision, and we're going to be able to break ground on that in 2026, possibly sooner, if we can get our permitting and approvals in place. And so there's a lot of good things happening. Reality is if you could take what we're doing and, what Sitka probably needs is that times a factor of 3 or 4 or 5. But we can't get too discouraged about that. We can just keep doing what we're doing and try to build some momentum to do more. I would say as far as challenges go, affordability is a huge one. Of course, we could use more resources and capacity and that sort of thing to get things done. But we're trying to create opportunities for home ownership. And in order to do that in an affordable way, Randy and his organization, you've tapped into that a little bit with some success. And we're going to be looking to some of that as a model. But we're trying to do it in a way that it's sustainable too, so that we can build a 40-lot subdivision, and then maybe from some proceeds, we can actually turn around and do another one after that. And so you've got to find a sweet spot that, maybe we can bring in a little revenue to do the next project, but it can't be so expensive that no one can afford to buy a lot and that sort of thing. So it's a lot of insurmountable challenges like we saw up here on the board, if you look at them that way, but can't let that get us down. We just put our head down and keep working. Very thankful for everybody working on these things. I have an incredible staff that I'm thankful for. Hiring is hard, but I've got some great core staff that have been able, I can't do anything on my own. Very thankful for them. I'd like to recognize our vice chair, Martha Moses here. Thanks for being here, Martha. And then just the last thing, why do we do it? I'm not sure who was here on the first day when the state historian was here. Katie Ringsmith, I think was her name. Not sure if she's in the room, but she had the baseball exhibit up. And I don't know, there's no crying in baseball, but I don't know if anybody else got kind of teared up when she was talking about driving by the baseball fields in Anchorage and thinking about her kids playing Little League and that sort of thing. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri myself, moved up here in 2004 for, at that time it was just a job. And a funny thing happens after you've been at it for 20 some years is it's not just a job, it's home. And the more you work, the more you live in these small communities, home isn't just the place and the job, but it's the people, the kids that I've coached, coaching kids that are my kids' age, coaching kids that are living in housing authority, housing units, members of the community. And so the more you do it, the more invested you are, the more you want to keep doing it. And I hope we can all be kind of have our heart into it that way. And I can't help it. It's just happening more and more each year that I get a little more invested in it. So keep up the good work. And I don't know if there's question and answer time on this, or are we just giving our 2 cents?
I think that's it. We are over time. I think we did pretty good. We could talk about this for the whole conference and keep on going. So, but with that, we will go ahead and exit. Thank you all for being on the panel. And Mr. Harris, I think he's up next. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. That's going to be a topic that we are diving into in committee with earnest throughout the year. So appreciate being able to identify the champions and those that are working in that space. Is Dan in the room? Dan Harris. Well,
You had more time?
you had more time. You just should have waited. Should have waited. One thing I'll just say about search, they were having a leadership, they were called to offsite meetings, was why they were not here in mass this week. And Dan was in town and he was going to come and speak to us today. It may still happen, we'll see. But search has been an incredible engine for our economy. You saw Melani's by the numbers, the number of employees, I think it was like 1,503 or something. How many employees did you? Pop quiz. 150. Yeah, so close. So an incredible footprint in the region and the services that we really depend on for our economy to keep that more moving. Appreciate the fact that Department of Labor and Commerce work on those licensure issues so that we can identify the workforce needs that are there. That is a big concern going forward. So we're very mindful of the needs that we have to develop the next crop of employees and workers in each of the sectors, which is why the auction last night was so important, and really appreciate everyone's participation in that. So if Mr. Harris is not in the room, maybe he'll show up a little bit later and we can work him in. We could, I think our next panel might be able to come early and we can start talking about that. If we end a little bit early, Mr. Harris can slip in at the end there. But I do see, is Jenae? There she is. Okay. So if the three of you want to come up, do you have, Jenae, do you have slides? No, we don't have slides. So we could, not you. We got to, let's move some of these tables together and get a little more.
Want me to grab this table?
Put the screen up. Huh. I bet we can even get some lights in here too. All right. Well, first I want to thank the panel for being here. Some of you, we all made extraordinary efforts to get here. Some a little more so than others. Thanks, Nils. Sometimes juggling family and work and all the different things that go into life gives us a creative path to where we end up. But we ended up here. We appreciate that. I want to just start off with an opportunity for just a general introduction. So, who you are, your role within the agency, and how it relates to, our topic of just getting ready for the future. And then got a couple of questions just to kind of dive into, how we're meeting the objectives that we have identified in the set. So Nils, you want to start? You always seem to be ready in season and out of season.
Always talking. Hi, everybody. My name's Nils Andreassen. I'm the executive director.
we've been really working on our stakeholder engagement and communicating with different industries and state and government agencies and making sure that we're able to provide that opportunity to Alaskans that haven't had it before. When I first met Commissioner Sandy, we talked about how much opportunity is really out in Alaska, and there's so many different initiatives that people just don't know about, and how to market that to Alaskans in a way that they're able to take advantage of those opportunities and not just be basically sitting ducks. We want to make sure that everyone's able to get the information that will help them strive and prosper in Alaska and be able to stay here in their communities that they want to live in and not have to leave to go work elsewhere.
You know, we talked about brain drain for so long, but the whole body's gone, you know, it's like population decline. I know you're looking at that statewide as well. Are you seeing any successful strategies to bring them back, or is this a trend that's going to consolidate into more of a hub and spoke? I mean, what strategies or insights are you seeing?
No, we're doomed. I think one of the key words here for this panel discussion is future, right? And what do we want that to look like? I think, you know, workforce development or even economic or job development assumes a lot, right? It might assume growth. It might assume opportunity. And I don't know, I've been looking at Meilani's numbers and Southeast by the numbers, and yeah, there's a little bit of jobs and people are fleeing. And that's probably aggressive, but and that's the trend. You can't pay people enough to live in Alaska. It's not the PFD, it's not the job, it's something else. And somehow we haven't gotten that right over the last decade. So the trend, I think, statewide is that we've got kind of some soul searching to do around what does keep people here. If it's not jobs and if it's not business development, what kind of communities are we building? And in Southeast, I think it's like the numbers kind of describe the trend really well. You've got a decrease in your prime age employment. You have a gap. Maybe we should redefine prime age, and that would help. But you've got young people leaving, and you've got increasing retirement population. Great. What does an increased retirement population look like? What kind of services will they need? Is that your goal? What kind of incentives are you providing to residents in your community for one, retiree age residents, or young people or family or business owners? So really tying, you know, thinking about what does that future look like? What do the numbers say? And then developing a strategy within each community to hit the right incentives to get the people here, keep the people here that you want to.
And I think to Nils' point too, if you're planning or you predict a future where you are having a larger population of seniors, are you planning for the workforce that needs to be there to support those seniors? So do you have enough CNAs and nurses and caregivers, people in your community? Is there a community?
A community near your community that you can partner with? What type of training do your people need? And thinking about what your population and what whatever you're doing for business development, you know, what are you trying to build or grow, or what do you want your community to look with? What are the workers that you need to support that?
Robert, just one more thing. Not really, but I mean, I think another element to this that I find really interesting is like you can have job growth and business development and not have people live here, right? I mean, the trends around the state are people 2-week on, 2-week off type employment. I was just reading the article a month ago where you've got a police officer who lives in Sydney, Australia, flying every 2 weeks to Bethel. And he's doing it for love, and I get it, and it's out of his own pocket, but like that's increasingly common where we're seeing, especially for public safety, and I think for other industries or sectors, where you don't have to live in Alaska to benefit from all the things and opportunities that we offer. And if that's the scenario that we're faced with, and it really calls in, I mean, it calls into question workforce development, right? Like what kind of investments are we making in ourselves and that other people are leveraging? It intersects with the business development and where are you going to draw a workforce from? It could be anywhere in the nation because they don't mind benefiting, having a quality of life elsewhere and earning a living here.
You know, we gained it a little extra time starting earlier. I would welcome any questions. I would welcome insights. Maybe there's a business out here in the audience that has a strategy, has a thought. Maybe there's a community leader that says, you know, here's a lacking need. I've got a question, or here's one of our strategies to keep our families intact. I think what, and maybe, I'm not sure who we have for staff around here that can run around with a microphone. It might just be Aaron, because he's the first one I see. But I think that it's encouraging that you can have a broad workforce to draw from nationally, but that concerns me a lot. It concerns me a lot. It's because they benefit from our jobs, but we don't benefit from the growth of our communities, our children in the schools, our, you know, our tax bases, our economic development, the scale that we need. So question, thought.
Question and thought. Wow, microphone. So I want to tap back into something that was mentioned earlier in finding career pathways and these career clusters, and also some of the challenges of the logistics. If somebody is in a rural community, they want to tap into that career pathway, but they have to leave to do that. And I guess my question falls in, how can local communities support that growing workforce need if somebody wants to get a CDL, or if somebody wants to get their plumber's apprenticeship, but they have to leave to do that? How can we better connect folks with that service and yet incentivize them to come back to their community? And what programs might be available for that?
Yeah, that's a real problem. It's a question that we talk about often, about how do we connect people with training when that training isn't available in their community. And some of the things that we work with our industry partners to do is to bring those career pathways experiences to communities. We are managing the workforce development plan for the maritime sector. Recently, the Marine Highway System has made an investment in what we do, which is some of the career pathways outreach. And we've been sending someone from our staff down to different communities, to maritime communities, and doing hands-on things with the students in those areas and some young adults outside of school. That our industry partners have come to the table, including the ferry system and Allen Marine and others, to give tours of their vessels, to really give them kind of a job shadowing time to get their hands on. And the follow-up to that is our staff helping them get like their marine merchant marine certification, their TWIC card, their food handlers card, so they can work in the steward part of the ship. Those types of programs are available. We are not the only ones bringing those types of experiences. Agencies like ARE, Alaska Resource Education, they're doing great things with mining sector, bringing teachers into industry and bringing industry to the students. They're actually going to be hiring some externs and housing them in Anchorage when they need to be in Anchorage for some of their training. So there are lots of resources around
around the state. And I think that's really, Commissioner Munoz and I have been talking about, how do we connect all those dots for people? How do we have a central place where they can get that information and understand, or request someone like Becky's team at ARE come out to one of their schools and have those experiences? And also, I guess I would be remiss to say, if I didn't mention that ASA has a scholarship program that we utilize for not just traditional degree programs, but if you wanted to get your 100-ton license at AvTech, which is a short-term training, any type of professional development. If you wanted to become a certified safety professional, we need them. I need one right now, as a matter of fact, in my office. So those opportunities are available, and I think there's a lot of partnerships. And I would say, please give me a call. I would be happy to talk with you more about that.
I think I would just add to that, Cari-Ann, that so one, we've got good regional hub and training centers around the state. And so thinking about that, some of them are like really focused on jobs and careers in their communities or regions. So Alaska Technical Center up in Kotzebue is a good example. I've seen programs, the North Slope Borough at one point brought, they can't get driver's licenses, let alone a CDL up in Barrow. So, thinking about, they brought the department up and had somebody do driver's licenses. They're offering more opportunities for getting a CDL. So I think you see kind of episodic approaches to addressing that. I don't know, it's almost protection. It's not like really protectionist to say, we just want to do everything in our communities and not keep them from going out, right? Because we're worried about losing them. But there's an element to that. And I think Alaska falls into that trap often, where we're like, we just have to keep people here, and because we're so afraid to lose them. When we're a global society, if we lived in the lower 48, we would be all over the place, and it would be easy for us just to pop over to the next town or the next state. And we don't think like that here. We really think about this, like, how do we hold people to place in a way that is really critical for us, but we haven't started thinking about how do we let them go and thrive and make choices about coming back, so because they want to live here and be part of this future here. And I think it's a big part of, Cari-Ann, you mentioned like telling them about their future, right? Giving them a future to look at. It's not about this present and where they're going to go with career training or whatever. It's about, I'm going to live in my community because it has a future and I can see myself in it. I think that's the story we have to increasingly tell.
I just want to build off of the future in Alaska and provide some information on a poll that we did with Dittman in 2024. It was very positive, and a lot of the numbers that we received weren't shocking to us, but this was something that we felt really good about, is that most Alaskans still believe that it is a good place to do business. Nearly 2/3, so 63% of Alaskans say that Alaska is a good place to do business, citing low taxes and favorable regulations as key factors of attracting investment in Alaska. And then nearly 3/4 of employed Alaskans, so 73%, see opportunity for professional growth in Alaska. So while we hear a lot of negatives, there are a lot of Alaskans that believe that they can thrive and grow in their communities, and if not in their communities, at least in Alaska. So just wanted to share some of that information with you.
Thank you. President Jackson.
I did. We ran into the problem with getting our people out to get CDLs and other certifications. And we partnered with a company up in Juneau, I forget the name, but they owned a company that required they have CDLs, and they became certified teachers. And we had them bring down one of their trucks, and they worked with our people, and they did all their practice practicing down there on an open field and stuff, and they actually drove into the community. But that was to save money, because to send them out to a hub training center would cost us anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 a person, which people can't afford. Even the tribe can't. We got to save money where we can. But it worked out real well. I think we got like 12 CDL drivers now. The reason why we're doing that, we were on track to do some work through the tribe to improve some of the Forest Service roads. But of course, with this administration now, everything's kind of on hold. But just in case in the future, we do have CDL drivers, and we also got some people certified in heavy equipment operation. And that was basically done in our community. They had the equipment there. And the only time they had to leave was to do their testing, and they went to Juneau for that. So, you know, there's ways around of getting things done. And I think, you know, it just takes a little bit of thinking and partnering with people that are capable of doing that.
Cari-Ann, so thank you, President Jackson. One of the things though that comes to mind from that comment is we have a boom and bust kind of cycle too for workforce development. And I've seen this, so federal administrations, you know, you get funding to AHFC to train energy auditors or energy efficiency contractors a decade ago. In a 5-year grant, everybody becomes a contractor. And then the grant goes away and the work goes away because the administration priorities change. And now we don't have any. And then, you know, there's a new bump of funding, and there's opportunities, there's jobs, and nobody's trained. And so we're always playing like this catch up and like lost game when it comes to skill development and shifting priorities at a federal or state level. And I guess, Cari-Ann, the question I have for you is like, have you mapped that out? How do we maintain some level of continuity across certifications and matching that with careers? And how do we just like stabilize what really does feel like a boom and bust skills development arena? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And actually it's a kind of a point of frustration for me as well, because I do see, and I think that really is more kind of in the public sector driven, right? So you get these grants for big infrastructure projects. And I have to complain a little bit about these grants for infrastructure projects that might be $10 million. Do you know how much money is in that grant for workforce development for that project? Probably zero, sometimes 200,000 of 10 million, something like that. It's unrealistic. It's not, that's not reality. If you are going to build a giant thing, whatever that is, boat, harbor, you know, port, whatever, road, you need people, and it's expensive to train the people that you need to have working for you. So can be very, very frustrating. I think that I am blessed to work with a lot of really great employers in our industry sectors that really are thinking bigger than that, right? They're thinking statewide. In some cases, in these industry sectors, they're meeting amongst each other to talk about total workforce needs across the state rather than what I need for my project, and kind of sharing, you know, their predictions of what these projects are going to be and how they're going to go through. And really, I think this started a lot on the safety side of things. We've had a lot of collaboration on what the safety training requirements are for oil and gas, for mining, for maritime, and people have that kind of brought people to the table about what do we have in common, right? So then it gets to be a bigger conversation about what do we as employers predict our needs are going to be into the future, And then being able to relay that information to an organization like ours that's focused on workforce development, that can bring partners like the university and AbTech and the regional training centers, our native corporations that are investing in these workforce development programs and just making it strong. So I do think, Nils, a little bit that kind of up and down in training and that kind of shots of money really is kind of coming more from the public sector side. And I think it's well intended, but it can, like you said, flood the market with certain skills that maybe are not necessarily long term. All training is good, though. You know, as well as I do, that we talk about career pathways as if they're linear. And I think most of us can attest to that our career has not been linear at all, right? So
I feel almost attacked, like, oh yeah, that's the public sector. But I think what I heard from your answer is, like, we have to think about it in terms of careers. We have to think about it in terms of cross-sector application. And that's the way to maybe smooth that out. It's not like you get a glut of money and you do just the one thing with it. You have to apply that to a broader range of skill sets.
And I really think that, you know, it's been kind of a dream of mine for a long time to have a statewide plan across all industry sectors, because if you read the individual workforce plans that have been created in mining and maritime and healthcare, and there's a lot of the same issues, there's a lot of the same initiatives and strategies that are being implemented by these industry sectors, that if we can bring them all together, and that's kind of where we are now, we're finally all working together as employers versus industry sectors, and I think we're going to make a lot of progress.
Thank you. You know, along the concept of accessing the necessary training that President Jackson referred to as well, I want to just do a quick shout out to the leadership in Cloak, where we with the mayor, the deputy mayor, and administrator here, where, you know, 15, 20 years ago, they had the vision to create a technical center there in Cloak. Then now they're partnering with Tlingit and Haida to establish Generation Southeast, a facility there in Cloak, and one in Juneau to help bring some of those programs and training. So I just want to acknowledge the vision that your community had and applaud that as well. So Rachel.
Thank you. Oh, this panel is so exciting, and it does really link into some of the work that the Sitka Chamber is doing. And I just wanted to kind of share a little bit with the room. The Southeast Leadership Summit happened on Monday, and we had organized it with the hopes of inviting Southeast Alaskans in to gather to talk about leadership and talk about kind of that career journey, just like you guys were talking about, is that one of the things we do at every one of our emerging leader gatherings is we have the person talk about their career path, because nothing is as you would plan or think it would be. And I think encouraging and telling our people, our workforce, that it's okay to take another direction or to step in. We gathered over at the university and had about 60 of us. There's several people that were there. And we didn't only have emerging leaders. There was also established leaders, and all the generations were there. And we had a multi-generational conversation about how the different generations can be strengthened by, leaning in on their skill sets and things. So anyways, I want to just plug that, because I think we even talked about it. Maybe it needs to go on the road. Like, could we come and bring this program into your community? Because I think everyone that left that summit felt so encouraged and supported. And it was a lot of talk about your whole self. And so we had a wellness track and personal finance. We also talked about leadership, conflict resolution, and then entrepreneurship, and how some examples of people that have been successful. I also wanted to share that we're having initial conversations. I'm thinking about how are we kind of guiding and leading our workforce, and talking about having our job and career fair. We 10, 20 years ago, we had one big fair, 800 students. We brought it together, but it's not only someone that's recruiting for a job that's opening now, but we're, introducing a job in the future. And I think we've, looking at the internships and the kind of, are we inviting workers and different people into our places? It's like, we're so busy, but we're, taking an intern or saying yes to do something more, maybe feels like it could be a lot of work, but actually it's so rewarding. And so I think as we're kind of like looking at where are we going in that future planning, how could we open up our time and space to mentor and bring in and introduce. I was telling the owner of C-Mart that I had my very first experience was going into the bakery. When I was in like 3rd grade, I got to have a tour of the bakery, and that ended up being one of my first jobs, was not the bakery, but I made coffee at C-Mart. And so I feel like that did tell me I could work there, and those kind of experiences could really make a difference. I don't know that I have a question, but I'm so excited about talking about this.
Talk to me about workforce development if you want. I'd love to partner with all of you. Please.
I think that's really great that you had that experience, and those experiences do really open doors and open eyes for our young people. I have a young daughter. Well, she's not that young. She's 21. And she is having trouble kind of figuring what she wants to do, but she has been thinking about it like, it's this choice that I have to make for the rest of my life. And I'm going to take this training and that's what I'm going to do for my whole life. And I'm like, no. You just need to know what you're going to do next. Like, what do you want to do now? What do you want to do next? Like, this is the natural progression of things. And then as you get more experiences in your life, you'll figure the direction that you want to do. I guess what I would preach is that we start telling our kids that sooner, that they start having more types of experiences like Rachel had, where they're visiting businesses and they get these tours and they get to talk to professionals, and all of that gives them more confidence to consider what they might want to do for a career. And it's a little bit, it's not like a program or, we always kind of want to put this structure around what is workforce development, but a lot of it is these conversations, these one-on-one connections that you make with young people when we're talking about that particular piece of the workforce that we want to develop, because there's a lot of pieces, as you talked about, Robert, there's people we want to recruit into the industry, that we want to recruit from out of state, that have specific skills, that training we don't have available here in the state of Alaska for some specialized science careers. Those types of things are real too. But when we're talking to our kids here locally and doing outreach like Rachel is doing, we need to be able to give those kids confidence and understanding and let them know that there's a place for them in your community, and there's a job for them, and they can explore these different experiences and figure out what's going to make them happy and tie them to their community. And I just encourage all of us as professionals to have those conversations with our kids and with other kids, because our kids are less likely to listen to us than they are to someone else.
Rachel, I would just add, when I'm thinking about leadership, it's just such a great place to fit future into. And, there's an aspect of professional development, right? Where what am I going to do with myself? But leadership is about what am I going to do with myself in relation to others? And that's really how you build community. It makes me think of, in our Constitution where we've got rights and corresponding obligations. Like, that's the leadership step that we have to think about. And as a region, that's the step that you can take. And to fit it into a workforce conversation too, I would say that, it's not just what we've said along the way, is it's not just about workforce. It's about the other building blocks of community. It's housing, it's access, it's cost of living. It's all these other pieces that you have to kind of build around and respond to and be responsive to when it comes to building your community. So I think you can fit a lot under leadership, including how you address the future that you want to see in your communities and region.
All right, thanks. We'll take one more question.
Hayakhat, Chilkat Kwan Dok Hayakhat. I'm from Klukwan. My name's David Strong. I'm a council member over there. We've had a lot of good conversations over here in regards to how we can deal with our economy. We were talking about the youth of today and how we can keep them in Alaska. Well, I think all the things we talked about are really good. I just got a couple questions for everybody here. Who likes eating moose? Who likes to fish? Who likes the beautiful scenery we have in Alaska? This is Alaskan culture. Right now, there's a divisiveness in our communities that our youth don't like, and that's political culture. Gotta forget this political culture and start talking to each other more often. How do we both get what we want on both sides of whatever party? I'm Chilkat party. I'm not either left or right. Let me tell you, I think if we can get past political divisiveness and work as Alaskans to Alaskan culture, fishing, hunting, living on the land, us Chilkat people, we are people who live on the land. And so is many people in this room, I'm sure. I think for young people, we need to drop the political divisiveness and see how we can talk to each other to get what we need for our communities and how we can make it work. That's what I've got to say.
Thank you. And I think that's one of the things I really cherish about Southeast Conference, because that is the territory that we stake out, we cherish, we build on, and then we do it together. I'm going to just go allow we're just going to kind of go this direction as a panel wrap up. I just want to build a little bit off what Rachel said, because it tied in with comments yesterday about apprenticeships and, how we connect those, whatever age those students might be. And just a reminder, as we're looking at businesses and communities, it is a national goal to meet that 1 million apprenticeships. So build those into your work plans, build them into your proposals. As you mentioned a minute ago, so often we're writing grant proposals for these things and we don't have the component in there to be ready to actually accomplish that. And it becomes more costly and self-destructive. So anyway, I'm just going to ask the panel, just kind of just go through with a thought with follow-up. Are there toolkits available? Where's point of contacts? Any final thoughts you might have as we go down? So Jenae.
Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of opportunity in Alaska, and every time we visit different communities, our eyes are open to new opportunities and new initiatives that are happening and funding sources and jobs available and industry needs and community needs. And I just invite you to you. Happy to talk with you about what kind of possibilities are out there. And then as soon as our website is launched and we kind of have a landing page that will really help your communities and understand what is out there, because there is a lot of opportunity and the future is really bright. It's just connecting those to those who need them. So please feel free to reach out to us. My name's Jenae Erickson, like I mentioned. So jenae.erickson@alaska.gov. I'm happy to communicate with you. Or if you have any concerns, questions, please just, I would love for everyone in the room to be involved in the Alaska Business Initiative, because we really can't do it without everyone.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to put out an invitation to everyone in the room to participate in an upcoming workforce convening that's going to be happening in Anchorage in conjunction with the Alaska Career and Technical Educators Association. On October the 14th and 15th. Part of it will take place. They're both just half days. The 14th will be at the Captain Cook, where the ACTE conference is. There's no cost to attend the workforce convening. We are encouraging especially industry to be there, to be present, to be a voice in this statewide effort. And we do hold a business education compact, which is kind of a
forum for discussion, which has started to become kind of the discussion group around the statewide workforce development plan every month on the second Wednesday of the month over Zoom. So it is available to participate in from a distance. And also, I'd like to invite everyone to come to Anchorage on October the 22nd and join me at the Anchorage Brewing Company for a beer and a good time for our ASA annual meeting. It's always fun. It's a great place to network and connect. It's relaxing. There's good door prizes. It is a total networking event. I know we call it an annual meeting, but there's mostly just meeting of good ideas and conversation, and I'd really appreciate seeing all of you there. And just as a final thought, I want to say thank you all so much. I've been coming to the Southeast Conference for close to a decade. I think I've been to a lot of different communities here, and I have to say it is my most favorite conference to go to in the state because of the culture of your community and the richness. I come from Western Alaska, which is very, very different. It has its wonderful points and perspectives too, but I think every time I come here, I feel like part of the family. And I think that it's really a unique and warm and welcoming environment that I'm always so appreciative to be welcomed into. And thank you, Robert, for this opportunity.
Thanks.
Robert, why don't you hold your annual meeting at a brewery? I mean, and probably he does, right? Like, I don't know how much business is actually occurring here versus other locations, but I like where you're going with this, Cari-Ann. I just want to, kind of come back to the title of the session, Future Ready Resilience. And so resilience, the ability of a community and a region to bounce back. And I'm applying it to Southeast in particular. So what do you need to be able to bounce back? What does your workforce need? Are your industries responsive to political whim? Are your industries responsive to and able to bounce back from environmental change? Is your future inclusive of all the different variables that could affect the decisions that people are making right now about where they live and where they invest and where they start or keep their business? Think about what you're able to do within your community and region to bounce back, and how stable are you is your base. So that's building blocks like water infrastructure and energy and transportation or access. It's an education system. It's childcare. It's housing. It's the services that your people are dependent on in your community or that they have access to affordably. So all of those things are going to be really important components of your future and how able you are to actually be resilient in the face of all the things that are out there, hard or otherwise. And I'm glad to have had this opportunity to talk about workforce and jobs and our people, and in relation to all these other things that are really critical for the region. So thanks, Robert.
Well, before we dismiss the panel, did Mr. Harris make it?
Do you want us to cover healthcare and search too?
Let's make sure, because sometimes you can't see the trees for the forest when you look out over an audience. So, okay, so we've got a couple of minutes. We started lunch early. It's scheduled for 11:45, so we can get back in for another exciting panel, because really it's about how we prepare our communities for the future. So this conversation has been fantastic. I want to thank each of you, and I'm looking forward to the next one as well. Please thank our sponsors, who is See Alaska, as you heard from Jason yesterday. They've been a strong supporter of our communities in our region, and they sponsored our last day lunch for a couple of years now, and appreciate their support here. But for each of you on the panel, please a warm welcome of appreciation, and we'll see you at lunch. There's actually a lull. You can tell when there's good food. People, they've got food in their mouth, and they're like, a little quieter. That's great. So we have, it's not the end of the day, but this is going to be the last structured panel that we have before the breakout session. So I'm really excited about this particular panel. About 3 years ago, we started focusing on what are good investments in communities. How do we invest in communities? How do we get communities ready for investment? So this is just kind of a continuation of that thematic question. And we've got a great panel. Where's Ada? Where's Mr. Stieren? Dave? There he is. All right. This is like, I see everyone gathered over here. So would you please welcome Katie Berry, the CEO of McKinley Research Group, and our distinguished panel. It's a distinguished panel. All right. I'm gonna go have lunch.
Extinguished panel?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I picked up on that too.
Thanks. We've got 30 minutes before you can officially extinguish us. And I have my phone up here.
Dave Stieren. Oh, nice to meet you.
Okay. Keith, join us.
Well, he told me I couldn't.
Are you distinguished?
I don't actually think Robert gets to make that decision today. Sorry, Robert. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed lunch. We are up here today to talk about an inherently fascinating subject, and that is investment. Can I get a show of hands? Who in the room considers themselves a data person? Okay, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, I know. It's
Okay.
not on.
He
just said.
Well, good. You'll be terribly disappointed then today because we've got no slides, we've got no data, we've got, as the kids would say, only vibes here. So what we're going to do is we're just really going to have a conversation as if we weren't sitting in a sitcom lineup here, and just welcoming.
Going to the light?
Look at that. Look at that. And I'm going to ask a few leading questions, and then we're going to have all of these folks on the stage kind of sound off about that. But before we do that, I think you all should tell everyone who you are. We all know who Keith is, but we'll start with you, Keith. And we're going to do really quick. Who are you? Where are you based? And what kind of investment do you represent?
Hi. My name's Trouble.
Hi, Trouble.
So Keith Perkins, and I have been with this same agency for 30 years. I grew up here in Sitka, I grew up here in Sitka, and I've been with this job for 30 years now as the area director for my agency. So we're a federal financing agency, and we are a sister agency to the Forest Service, and we live inside the communities with what we invest in. We help finance business development. We work with cities and tribes with the infrastructure, water, sewer, electric, any of that kind of stuff that helps the communities, local governments support business development, community development. We get involved in single family and multifamily housing. We get involved in regional level power grids, telecom. Right now we're working with AT&T and dropping fiber cable up through the inside passage. And so we work from projects like that, $85 million projects, down to helping grandma and grandpa needing a new window on their house. So we're kind of all over the map. So I love this investing in communities things because our agency, we really can look at kind of like everything and see where we can go. So my role, as I see it forever, has been to be a center fielder, listen to what you guys are up to, and see if I can have a program, or maybe I know somebody that might have a program that'll help you.
There we go. I'm Dave Stieren with the Alaska Industrial Development and Export Authority, which is AIDA, which is the name we're stuck with because it was created decades ago and rebranding would require a good help from our friends, the legislature. Just a quick bill, just something like the make government less clunky sounding bill. That's all we got. Much like Keith, we invest in a wide variety of projects except single family homes and dwellings. We're not in the mortgage or home construction business, although we feel we can play an important part in getting more capital on the streets for construction of housing. And with the governor's order to look at current regulations and statutes that cover different government agencies, we're housed in Department of Commerce. That is something we're taking a pretty aggressive look at, trying to bring our organization out of its stereotypical big mega project investment to things that are more impactful to more communities across the state. Our current most impactful program that we have, aside from we fund a lot of the small business programs that we don't administer, we just spin off monies to them, is our loan participation program. You get a loan from a participating bank within the state of Alaska, you build your thing, then we buy out 90% of it, finance it at a longer term, lower interest rate. It frees the bank up for their liquidity to invest in other projects. It gives you, basically the bank's client's client, a longer window to pay off that loan with a lower interest rate and try to ease the burden. We have a due diligence process that, it's, you have to get through it. We're an investment firm. We are a de facto bank, but much like Keith said, if we don't have a product that works for you, we try our best to find you one, because it's in, frankly, our mission and best interest to have things moving within the state, as opposed to the philosophical conversations that we seem oftentimes to be addicted to of wouldn't it be nice if. We prefer we finally got that bleeping thing done. Frankly, it'd be much, we prefer that conversation.
This button. There you go.
Hey everyone, I'm Michelangelo Bustamente. I'm the commercial lending officer at Native American Bank. I oversee the Alaska and West Coast market. I'm based in Seattle, but as the Alaska lender, I enjoy getting up to Alaska and try to get up at least once a month. I feel like, when I'm not up here, the last time I was up here was in July, actually, for a meeting with Haida in Anchorage, I hadn't been back, since, so like coming up on 2 months. So it felt weird. I felt very unmoored by not being in Alaska the last couple of months. So really enjoy being up here. At Native American Bank, we exist to help bridge the gap in Indian country as far as providing access to capital and financing. We lend across the country. And, like I said, I oversee Alaska and the West Coast. And we do, all different types of projects, whether it's 105L community facilities or other large community facilities, affordable housing, Title VI, small business loans, really the full gamut of commercial lending, as well as banking too. And really passionate about the space, really passionate about Alaska in general, and thankful to be here.
All right, and I'm Nils Andreassen with the Alaska Municipal League, and I think of my role, or an AML's role, in relation to our 165 cities and boroughs as an enabler of the autonomy of local decision-making as it relates to their role as stewards of public resources and their opportunities to invest in the public interest.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for telling us who you are, where you are working. I have a really foundational question for this group of folks, because I imagine that if I was standing in New York City or maybe in Seattle, sorry to put you on blast there, and I said the word investment, that calls something really specific to mind for different people around the country. And it might mean something a little bit different depending on the organization you work with or who you're talking to. So when we're talking about investment, what does that actually mean to you? And let's start with you, Michelangelo, and then anyone else can popcorn in.
Sure thing. For Native American Bank, what investment really means is for us, it equals empowering Native communities, right? So we think it's not just on the financial return, right? Obviously, that's an important piece as a bank, as well as the kind of sustainability and feasibility of the project from a financial perspective. But it's also, how can we empower our Native communities, right? And that's where, again, 105L lease facilities, whether to the BIA or IHS, to provide critical facilities or infrastructure in communities, small business loans, Title VI or affordable housing, LIHTC projects, that sort of stuff, right? I really think, and to your point of like, in Seattle, right, investment means one thing, right? But it's always one thing, in my opinion, to, talk about a project in, you're sitting on a Zoom meeting in an office in Seattle, and another thing to actually get out and walk the land with everyone and understand, hey, what does this project mean? Like, why is a community facility and language immersion school in a community in Alaska or California or wherever, why is it important for the community, right, on the ground? So it's beyond just the kind of financial returns that we look at. We look at the full picture.
You're just looking stoically handsome. I thought you were going to go next. Oh, all right. That's fine. Well, much like, by the way, Michelangelo Bustamente, that's a hell of a name. Can we all just acknowledge what we're thinking? That is that. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah,
well done.
My parents clearly had big expectations for me. So,
do you paint?
I don't.
No. But I've been an art major. With Ada's mission statement, I mean, yes, when we look at investments, especially for direct financing, it begins with the prism of, is this actually a project? We're kind of government and kind of not, so we don't really create projects as much as projects that occur within the state. We only invest exclusively within the state of Alaska. Now we can partner with, and we have, with financiers and investors from outside of the state for various projects here. The most recent one would probably be the Aliescam methanol plant up on the North Slope, which is the first monetization of Alaska's stranded gas since ever. We've never used Alaska's stranded North Slope gas for any commercial enterprise aside from re-injecting it into the reservoirs to produce more oil. So this will be a monetization of that. Instead of trucking thousands of gallons of methanol up the Hall Road, it will be produced on the slope, Alaska gas, continuing the operation of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. And we've probably financed about 55% of the overall construction cost. And then we will receive royalties and other payments that we will then spin off, and that'll be part of the dividend that we pay to the legislature every year. But I say that in a very long-winded way to say, while we do expect a return on our investment, we probably have lower benchmarks than Michelangelo does. But our primary obligation is to look critically at projects that positively impact the state of Alaska. I mean, that's it. We have a strike zone. We have benchmarks just like the other folks up here on the panel. But our mission statement is, how can we get to yes on a project that has merit for the state long term?
Keith, go ahead. I've been struggling philosophically, I think, or like thinking philosophically about where local governments kind of come in and how they think. And I imagine that they all think very differently. I mean, I would make assumptions, and they're not always going to be true, that there's not a profit motive to local government investment. Not always. There's potentially a role for local governments to fill the gap when there's not a profit from a project and the project is still needed for the public's benefit. Then they have a role in making an investment. And then I think there's kind of this third layer of local governments making investments that are outside the bounds of investment companies that actually lead to them making a profit by providing very basic infrastructure that they benefit from, that they're not contributing to in terms of, part of the capital stack that goes into, roads necessarily, or even water and sewer infrastructure for a community. They're not contributing necessarily to public education or workforce development in a community. So local governments kind of fill the space in between all of those things that the community needs, that companies and investors can benefit from. Local governments can come alongside with capital. I imagine they could take an equity stake in a project. They could make investments in ports and harbors or enterprises that do return some financial benefit and line of revenue for a jurisdiction. But that's not the starting point for, I think, most governmental decision making. It's what does the community need? How does this contribute to the health and well-being of residents, businesses, families, et cetera? And our role is to be the glue in between those.
I'm kind of smiley about that last comment because that's how I'm saying for me, sometimes I have an identity crisis because I've got 78 loan and grant programs that we manage. So I literally can be all over the community. So where I end up finding myself is I'm actually looking at who's coming to me and has an idea. I like to think we invest in people, and people can be the local government, people can be the tribal government, it could be a nonprofit that's trying to help the community with across the board, whether it's an education nonprofit or it's a technical assistance for business development nonprofit. It really, in my mind, it's always been all about, and I'm smiling all the way at the other end because I was on that board for AML a while ago, a couple of years ago. Forget the math, Sitka high math. But it's, I got my start in local government right when I was getting this job. And for me, getting dialed into what does a local government provide for the structure of the well-being of the community, both just in general, whether it's recreation, all the way into supporting the business community that provides the sales tax back to local government to fund schools. It's such a wide path. So me, when I think about our programs, I'm actually looking at Carl and wanting to know where he wants to go with his business, if he's interested in getting some support from us, because if he succeeds, then those communities are going to have some transportation services that maybe they don't have without Alaska seaplanes. I'll go around this room and look at people that I've sat with, and it's really just listening, smiling at Mike, love Kassan, right? But it was so fun to visit with you about what you've been doing and what you see your needs are. That gives me ideas on what can I bring to the table for you in terms of a program. That's where I think my time has been well spent, is just getting to know every one of you guys. And that's the first investment for me. As an agency of the federal government, using that time as in my investment, that turns around to help me see what we can do to invest in those communities financially.
Well, I'm going to go off script a little bit here because everything that you've all said has kind of inspired me to think about, especially Nils, as you were talking about that relationship of, maybe a local government and an investor or more of the capital realm. What would you say that you would like investors to know about working with local governments, or what is something that they should carry with them as they approach that work? And then on the flip side, for those of you on this panel that kind of see yourself as that investor, what do you wish local governments knew about investment so you could work better together?
I really want to work this quote in, so I'm going to use it here. But I often think about Bob Bartlett's address to the Constitutional Convention, and he talks about two threats to Alaska, at statehood. One is exploitation, development without leaving anything behind. The other is conservation, locking up resources where development can't occur. And I use that frame of reference in so much of how I think about the role of local government and the impact that we want to see in our communities. That it's not necessarily an either or, it's a who is it for? And the whole idea of development is that we're growing within communities, we're growing within economies, there's symbiosis. Bartlett also said in that same speech that local governments and government generally wasn't just expected to be the policeman anymore, but to provide so many other services. And when I think of Southeast local governments, so many of them are full services, right? They do everything. They touch every part of life in so many different ways. That the relationship, I think, between investment and local governments and what local governments want to see in that is partnership, is having some agreed upon, like, here's outcomes that we want to see that meet the public interest and see you here in very positive and encouraging ways, so expanding and contributing to the economy.
I'm up. So going back to the Aliaskim project, we traveled up to Barrow, and I get to call it Barrow because everybody on the plane had hoodies that said Barrow, and I said, if everybody's wearing hoodies with Barrow, then I'll say Barrow. And Rex Rock Jr. said that's fine because you have problems with every other language on the planet. So we had a brief presentation to the North Slope Borough Assembly, and I think we gained more insight as to the vibe of the community after attending 3 of those Borough Assembly meetings. And I think, investors will look at spreadsheets, we'll look at business projections, we'll look at all of that data that we get. But I think to understand the vibe of local governance, I think you need to read the local papers for a while, attend local assembly meetings, kind of pay attention to local elections, because what may work out great, we'll use a generic example, what may work out great on paper and you don't go to those meetings, you may find out that the industry or a specific investment you're planning on investing in, well, the community hates it. And they're teetering on the brink of passing legislation to absolutely kill it. And sort of the flip side of that, people on that generic borough or assembly would probably be served well to understand what we are looking at with the vibe of a community to see if we want to move forward in that investment. Because the financials may look great, wonderful, you're an Excel spreadsheet ninja, and you've impressed our investment committee. But we also want to know what the community wants. And making short-sighted decisions on both sides of that ledger, Nils used the word symbiotic. That is 100% accurate. And our lifestyles, especially nowadays, do not cater well to a symbiotic cooperative relationship. It's us versus them, private versus public, state versus local, community, tribal versus big corporation, all of that stuff. And so bridging the wires of connection and disconnect for everybody involved, I would view that as being critically important.
Keith, I really want to turn to you and hear your voice in this because you have a really long track record in Southeast Alaska of this type of issue. So where, as Dave said, there's some disconnect sometimes between all of these different groups, all of this, it's public versus private, corporation versus other. Do you see any disconnects that are in Southeast Alaska that are hurting the ability to attract investment to the region?
One of the fun things I've gotten to do, you can add a little bit of a twist to this response, is I've been a high school sports official for 43 years. And it's taken me a lot of different places. And I've got to meet a lot of kids that are now in leadership roles in these different communities. It's entertaining to me. Like in Southeast Alaska, I'd say the first thing I get asked when I show up and say Yakutat It's not, it's not an ask. They want to talk about the strength of their high school basketball team. So there's some bonding, back to that glue factory thing. There's some bonding that can happen in my mind when I get into a community. And one of my favorite takeaways I'm going to take with me is when we were on a strong run with the city of Wrangell and projects there. One of the things I love doing is I would go straight to the finance director, because we got a lot of projects with the city. So I'd go say hi to Jeff J. Bush, my fellow basketball referee. But after visiting with him, then the manager of the moment, what I really loved doing was going down to the harbor on Main Street and then just walking town and just meeting people, finding business owners and sitting with them and visiting, because that's such a key thing in our world, because we're a public agency, which then means one slice of, if a program fits, typically there's going to be a public notice part of the process. So it's important to be able to understand how the vibe, because the last thing we want to do is something that's going to start a caustic war within the community. I want to make sure that what we're doing is what the community wants. And so for me, I like hanging out with Mike walking around Kasan. He's gone. But it's just as much fun in Ketchikan, Yakutat, CBJ. It's fun to get to know the community, the people. I was smiling with Mike Gainey about one of my favorite projects was the library, and the librarian, and Myron, was such a stellar performer to get a brand new library for that community nonstop. And one of the things I end up wanting to find in every community is sometimes it's not the mayor, it's not the tribal administrator or the tribal president. Sometimes behind the scenes, there's somebody in almost every community that I've found is actually just a good nuclear bond for that community that everybody respects enough to go say hi to. I'm going to find that person. And my next trip, I want to go sit and hang out with him or her for a little bit before I start walking around. But when I come into a community from the outside, I have some advantages because of that high school sports officiating stuff, right? But it is kind of, I say in a good way, fun to be able to start seeing what the vibe is, or see where maybe the fracture is, because that's an important thing for us as an agency. When we want to pull the trigger, we want to make sure on a program that it's not going to be anything but beneficial to the entire community. So yeah, you're right. It's important to see that.
And is there any consistent tone or theme of the fractures that you have seen?
Oh gosh, now I'm going to start getting into trouble with my customers out here.
Excellent.
No, you know what? I think of, I'll say off the name, the community name, but it was a city project. And the town was completely divided over whether or not it should go forward. And I would go to their council meetings because we were going to be putting a good chunk of money into this project. We weren't the biggest funder, but we were teeing up a pretty good chunk of money. So I'd go hang out at city council meetings, and I would watch people throwing pens at each other at the council table. They were so angry about that project and so divided as the leadership for that project that it caused us to step back for a while. I mean, we literally just stepped back for a while, and I had to politely because I'm the face of the agency. And so in the moment, my boss said, I'm not sure we should be there. And I thought it was a good project for the community, but it's not my project. It belongs to the community. So what I had to say meant nothing, but I did have to carry the message to the elected body and say, we're not saying no. We just want to make sure you know that we're ready for when you guys say yes, we're still at the table. But let's just make sure we're step with the best foot forward. So that has happened a few times where the fracture in the community has caused us to never walk away, That's not us. Never walk away, but sometimes we have had to stop and let things sort out.
Katie, can I jump in? It's not my turn, but, and I really want to hear,
We have no turns here, Nils. Jump in.
I want to hear what Michelangelo, how you respond to these questions too. We've got to get our shit together, all right, you guys? If you're fighting with each other in a community, between communities, between city and tribe, Southeast is losing. There's no other way around it. You don't have an economy of scale to be doing more than cooperating, working toward collaboration, coming to consensus. And that's, I think, where we're at. I mean, we talked earlier about losing people. They don't want to be part of a future where we can't get our act together, right? And I think one of the beautiful things about the North Slope Borough, and Dave talked about this, but is their focus on trilateral cooperation. They won't make decisions unless the tribe, the city, and the village corporation are on board. And they actively work toward consensus within every community. And there's plenty of conflict, but to make a decision, they push each other to get on board. So, I mean, I see a future for Southeast Alaska. Communities that have so many strengths, so much diversity within their economy, in their community, so much opportunity, fighting with each other about how to take a step or multiple steps forward together or not. That really it's distracting from the progress that you all want to see, I think, within your community. So that's not a judgment of Southeast or you in the audience. I mean, I think it's broadly speaking, this is something that Alaska's got to solve and work toward. And that's going to be something that investors, I can imagine, are looking for. Like, if you're not come together around something, we don't want to invest in something that is just going to cause trouble down the road. I will see. That's it, Katie.
I thought you had a question for Michelangelo in there.
No, I just want to hear from him. I just wanted to get that out of my system first.
It's a really good segue, and I think there's something to build on there, Nils, is that my next question was for Michelangelo on, he's already outed himself as living in the lower 48, right? We'll forgive you. I haven't told you all I'm from Anchorage, so I'm really picking on him here. But so when you think about Southeast Alaska or Alaska more broadly, how does that, when we think about investment demand or the conditions to attract capital or investment here, how does that compare to other areas that you're working geographically?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say demand is just as strong as anywhere else, right? If not stronger, because access to capital has historically been limited here, right? And again, to kind of go back, I guess, to the last question and what we've all kind of circled around, my message to other investors, which is what I've learned for the last year and a half of being the Alaska lender at Native American Bank and familiarizing myself with Alaska, even coming from Seattle in the lower 48, is, it's one thing to talk about a project or hear about it when you're in a Zoom meeting in Seattle, right? Or in LA or Washington, DC, or even Anchorage, right? And it's another thing to actually get out and walk the land, meet with people in the community and understand what's going on. And yeah, from that, I've seen, again, it's not necessarily that there's less demand or anything like that up here. I think it's just historically there's been harder access to capital in general. And that's where, at a bank like Native American Bank or other great CDFIs like Spruce Root or several others in the community, really exists to be able to provide capital into that space, right? In these places where a lot of other traditional banks or investors may not want to touch, right? In the lower 48, Alaska is kind of this mythical place, right? And people don't fully understand it. That's, you have the idea that Texas is the biggest state, right? Or it's all this, yeah, exactly, right? All this other stuff. But, Alaska is an incredibly unique and complex place. Every part of the state has its own different needs and perspectives. And I think, in general, just getting to walk the land and understand what's important to the communities really is the biggest way to kind of understand overall how to provide the right access to capital.
While we're on the theme of kind of comparing and contrasting with other places. You've probably read the news lately. I hope for the actual big B bankers in the room, you've read news about interest rate cuts. So thinking a little bit outside of ourselves and getting out of our Alaska myopia, I was hoping that somebody here could lend a perspective on the recent federal board's interest rate cut, and how much does that matter for a region like a Southeast Alaska? Does that make a big change when the Fed makes these kind of rate cuts? Does it make a small change? Does it make a change at all? Maybe Michelangelo, we could start with you.
Sure. I mean, it makes access to capital more affordable, right? When rates drop. I mean, there's kind of two sides to that equation, right? Why are they cutting rates? What's going on with the economy in general? But from my perspective and kind of the projects I've worked on with 105L or Title VI, for example, or even just grants in general, I know a lot of tribes or governments or nonprofits will really live and die off grants, right? And grants are good. It's great. It's often free money, right? So it makes sense to go after those. But I think really the path to sustainability is finding ways to pair those grants or government programs or other investments with financing to be able to provide those critical resources, right? And so, for example, a 105L lease facility, we have done several projects, and really tribes in Alaska are taking huge advantage of that, where whether it's a community facility, language immersion school, hospital, if it's through the BIA or the IHS, those programs essentially will help pay for those facilities, right? They'll pay to operate them for operation and maintenance. And they'll also, as part of that, will include the principal and interest on the loan, right? And so whether it's an existing facility that you already have that's getting 105L lease income through BI or IHS, or a new facility that you want to build that's critical for the community, a lender like Native American Bank can come in and provide the financing for that. And I think in general, with rates, I mean, in that specific case, really it's the BIA or the IHS that's making the payment on behalf of the tribe to provide access to that facility. But overall, I think it does kind of help stimulate some of that, and bringing those rates down and pairing them with grants or other stuff can make these projects realistic.
Katie, I would just add, the flip side, and like an interesting twist for me, is that so AML runs a $1 billion investment pool where local governments, can place their cash, have it be secure, and the return is pegged to that rate. So as it goes down, there's less earnings for local governments and those earnings are reinvested into communities. So it's actually limiting local government's investment ability as that comes down. So there's like this different, it's interesting.
I think we could probably delve into that give and take a lot, but I'm cognizant that we have other things to do this afternoon. So I wanted to end with a question, and Michelangelo, you brought up grants. My perspective from tracking the Alaska economy is that we've been at a pretty high tide of grants with things like the Infrastructure Act, and there's been some pauses there as well. But I'd love to just, as a concluding question, ask, we've had a high tide of grants, so what does it look like for the region of Southeast to continue momentum from that, along with that investment? How do we invest in ourselves to not lose momentum? And I'd love to start with Nils, because I think he has some thoughts on this, and then open it up for rebuttal or agreement or whatever comes up. Full debate.
Yeah, I mean, one, we don't want to be grant dependent, and also Alaskans are so used to being so, right? I mean, free cash is so much better than borrowing it, is how I think many folks think about it. I mean, and AML's been very responsive to those opportunities. We've applied for $5 billion worth of grants over the last 3.5 years on behalf of the state and federal, local governments, tribal governments, nonprofits, university, and so on. So part of the problem, right? I get it. Grants aren't going away. We're applying for just as many grants. Priorities are changing. So there's a real shift in the language that we're using. somebody earlier today talked about the challenges related to housing and a long list of other issues as hard. They're not hard. They take time and they cost money. And maybe that's how you define hard. But cost isn't going to go away. So that money needs to come from somewhere. It could come from private capital. It can come from loans. Ultimately, it could come from Alaskans in lots of different ways. And there's arguments for each of those. But I think we're shifting toward it's going to cost Alaskans in some way more than it has in the past. And we can't depend as much as we have before on the state or federal government to provide subsidized dollars. So we've really got to make a shift toward self-reliance. That's a message we're carrying across our membership, and it's hard.
Yeah, I think, not to pick on federal elected officials, but to the point on grants, if the check-in is how much money is coming from Washington, D.C., and not an update from businesses talking about their new employment numbers, their expansion of operations, their investment in their businesses, their communities, your communities, it underscores a sense of weakness. Because every election cycle, and I've worked on a few federal elections, the fear of what are we going to do when so-and-so isn't there anymore, which is an impressively weak position for the state of Alaska to have in our DNA, and we have it in our DNA. We do. To Nils's point, we have to, and I know it's easy, right? Oh, I just need to give up sugar. I need to give up sweets. I can do it. I know I can. I'll drop 15 pounds. I don't have to go to the gym. We got to go to the damn gym. And the sense of no that is in many communities and in other communities, the word no doesn't exist. How do we get to yes? I think we're going to have 80 people running for governor next year.
He's not announcing any run, guys.
I think, well, Robert turned it off. I'll be quick. You made me get up for breakfast yesterday, and I am not a breakfast person, Mr. 8 a.m. I think we have to hold ourselves accountable, not on what government can do for you, but how do we as a state collectively get to, yes, we can do that, and we by God need to do that, as opposed to what are we going to do when so-and-so isn't such and such anymore? How will we survive? We have to focus on our strengths and become less addicted to things that make us look, appear, and act weak.
Keith, I would love for you to close us out on this question.
Well, let me put my referee shirt on. I like both answers. And in my world, you know, I like to remind myself, not the agency, but me, when I put this hat on and I go to work every day, that I'm working with your money. It's your tax paid money that is funding our grant and our loan programs. 78, by the way, grant and loan programs. So I got to listen to my local government guy down here. I got to listen to this young man. And I say,
oh, man.
I did say young. And, you know, how do you sort that out? That's a good question, because when I'm going to go back to one of our earlier questions, and I said, you know, the way I like to get my job done is get out there and get to know you guys and where you're trying to get to, and then look at what we have or maybe what somebody else has that might be a good fit for the community or the organization that's trying to put the infrastructure in place to help that community's local commerce and trade flourish. That becomes the sales tax revenue, the property tax revenue that your local government's trying to fund your schools, your fire, your library with. It's the sales tax revenue. That's where they really live and die on as a community's foundation. So we need a little bit of both in my mind. And so when I look at our grant program, there are some communities where that's the only place they can live because they don't have the horsepower to borrow money. And it's important to help them with their healthcare infrastructure or their education infrastructure. And if we can do that and justify that the only way we're going to be able to help them is with grant money, then I say that's a good use of the money. So I kind of like the answer at the end of the table. And I kind of like the answer at this end of the table because there's room for both. And me, I just know I'm working with your guys' money, and it has to be prudent and it has to be worthwhile, because what I don't want to have to do, by example, I'm not saying I'm picking on any community here, but it would be terrible if I supported a project for you and then 2 years later, I have to give you another grant to come back and fix what you didn't take care of. And then I come back 2 years after that to come back and help you fix what you still aren't taking care of. That's not a good use of our money. So it needs to be well thought out on any investment that we make, whether it's direct lending or using a bank to make a loan into a community or through a business or for a business opportunity, or just with local government stuff. It has to be a good investment and well thought out, well planned out. That's what we look for when we're going to invest, whether it's our loan money or our grant money. We still have to make sure that that bar is solid before we say yes.
Well, I only saw one person fall asleep in the audience, so I would consider this a successful time together. Thanks everyone for your attention and joining us here today, and snag any of these incredible people later today as they're around the audience. Thanks.
Thank you all so very much. Okay, thanks so much for facilitating that. You know, we have to keep the investments going into our communities. We have got so much more work to do and so much more infrastructure and so much that we need done. And so being prepared, making the connections, having the networking and resources, I hope you found that to be very informative and can guide some of our efforts across the year. So this is the last structured event, but we have a lot more happening. You've got 3 different work sessions happening, one on childcare, one on the municipal solid waste strategies, and one on Southeast Alaska's transportation plan. So rooms 1, 2, and 3 have breakout sessions. And then there's the bonus round for those of you that are still in town. The Sitka's economy, the Sitka Economic Development Association is having an event here at 3 o'clock. So if you're not otherwise committed and you're waiting for the plane like me, join us here to get some more insights on that. Madam President, is there anything that you want to say as formal words to end this event and send us to our workshops?
You don't give a city manager a microphone. I mean, I'm not a politician, but I might as well.
We all have capacity.
No, I just want to thank everyone for spending time together. It's really been a productive few days, and I want to invite you all to Juneau in February and look forward to seeing you. So thank you.
All right. With that, we'll adjourn to our workshops and the rest of the day. Safe travels. And thank you all so very, very much for making this such a success this week. Sorry.